This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business.
Who's that Pokémon? It's Eevee!
So I had you guys vote on which Pokemon would be realistified in the next video, and you guys, unsurprisingly, decided on Eevee. So let's get started. Well, that was easy. Sorry, Stewie. Okay, we'll actually start this time. Normally, I would start with aluminum foil and polymer clay, but I actually have a 3D sculpted head that I was going to use for something else, and with some tweaking, I think it would work great for an Eevee's head. I mean, Pokemon themselves are all about reduce, reuse, recycle, so why not? I mostly just widen the head to fit all of Eevee's adorableness inside, but not too wide, because then it becomes egotistical. For the ears, I absolutely did not cheat by finding a picture of Eevee, lined it up behind the sculpt, and traced the shape with clay. So it perfectly matched the right size and right shape. I absolutely didn't do that. No, me not ever. I mean, work smarter, not harder. But I mean, no, yeah, I did it all myself. I totally sculpted that all on my own. And after definitely not cheating, I continue sculpting by hollowing out the inner ear to make sure little Eevee can hear. Continuing with the reuse train, I'll also be tweaking one of my canine paws to be a little less on the murdery side and a little bit more on the cuddly side. And once the tweaking is done, I print them out on my Anycubic Photon Mono X 3D printer. I'll carefully pop off the pieces and then enjoy some support removing ASMR. Once the supports are removed and the resin is all cured, it's time to build the armature. In order to attach the armature to the head, first I need to dig out a hole using the Dremel. And then I'll fill those cavities I just made with goop, aka hot glue, and before the hot glue has a chance to cool off, I will push the armature inside and so that the hot glue will actually cool off around the armature, locking it in place. Once that's done, it's time to build up the body, and for that I use quilt batting. It comes in these long sheets because they're, made for quilts, and I cut it into strips and wrap it around the armature over and over until the body is built up to how I want. Now I make sure not to build it up too much, keeping in mind the thickness of whatever fabric I'm going to be adding on top of it. We're shooting for more of a cheapified chunk for Eevee, but like I always say, if you want chunk boy, you go and you get chunk boy. If you want thin boy, you go and you get thin boy, okay? We support all body shapes and sizes here. And while I'm building up the body, let's take a second to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Pokemon Master was once like all of you, having to catch them all and battle all the masters. But once his badges were all collected, he realized his real calling, and that's where Squarespace came to the rescue. His one-stop shop for all budding Pokemon masters has everything you can need for your journey onward. Squarespace having its own built-in e-commerce makes it easy for him to set up all his stuff to show his wares if you have the coin. Pokecoin, that is. If you aren't in the market for revives and berries, check out his photo gallery to see behind the scenes to see his products in action, or check out his socials, which are easily integrated into Squarespace's websites. So if any of this interests you, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/kpcreations to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And thank you once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I'll always say I'm not the channel to come to for competent sewing advice, as I certainly haven't a clue what I'm doing half the time. I essentially cut mismatched pieces of fur, jigsaw puzzle piece them together, sew it up, and kind of just hope for the best. Sometimes I get extra fancy and I'll cut slits in the fabric to make weird little body jackets for them. Like with all things I do, you just run in head first and kind of hope for the best and go for it. It's the go for it method here, folks. So, let me be real with y'all real quick. I thought about how quick and easy Eevee was coming together and how happy I was. And then I did all the sewing. And it wasn't until I had done all the sewing and started trimming that I realized, in fact, I was not making an Eevee, but a very furry log instead. And thus, I went through all stages of grief, including a long layover in bargaining, where editor Sarah had to convince me that it was worth it to redo it, when I, in fact, did not want to. But she was right, and I redid it. And that brings us right back to about here. So moving on from my pain and suffering, let's continue with trimming. I'm using a pet shaver and it works really well with faux fur and comes with different guards to keep Eevee floofy in all the right places. But even still, I always go back in detail with scissors to make sure the legs and joints are prominent and look more real and less like noodles. Or logs, I guess. I plan to fur Eevee's face, but before I do, I prime that face as close to the fur color as I can get, so when I go to put fur on it and I inevitably miss a spot, the paint will hopefully mask all my mistakes. I also carefully move the fur out of the way and paint the tops of the feet because I am horrible at planning and never remember to do this ahead of time. So let's transition from smooth Eevee boy to beautiful fluffy Eevee. Oh god. Clearly the evolution failed halfway, so let's just fix that with a little bit more trimming, shall we? Once that mess is done, I'm going to be using my airbrush to give some body shading all over. This fur color is pretty flat and I want to give it some tonal variation. Sometimes I can be fancy and say words like tonal variation. Other times I can say I don't know what happened, I don't know how we got here, I did a thing and things happened. You get multiple different versions of me on this channel, yes you do. Last step is painting all the details. I first primed the eyes and nose black. To make his mouth just pop a little bit more, I lined his lips with a dark brown. I then paint his little chompers a nice white. Then it's back to the eyes for his iris, which are just various shades of brown, starting with a very dark brown, working my way up to a very light, practically almost yellow for some highlights. I then paint a thin layer of UV resin over the eyes and nose to really make them pop and to really make that black a nice deep black and make those highlights just really pop against it. Finally, we finish up painting with the little toe beans, and we paint those a nice toe bean pink. And with that, little Eevee is done and ready to be the very best.